Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Instagram. Good morning, Facebook. And good morning, YouTube. It is Thursday. It is 9:30. It is Cotton Cuts time. And we have a fantastic lineup today. I'm going through this. We've got a lot of super fantastic stuff that we're going to be sharing with you guys. Get ready for some fun hacks. We're going to give you guys some kind of behind the scenes and how you can make some die cut parts and pieces and give you some tips and tricks and some insider information. You guys are going to love it. I'm seeing everyone is, oh my God, Nicole is up. She's already mowed her yard this morning. That's crazy. So I know in some places you guys are still experiencing extreme heat. We are enjoying early fall here in St. Louis. Now, I am going to readily admit, I'm not a fall lover. I don't like the getting cooler and death and decay, but I know that some people really like the football and the hockey and all the fun stuff. Yes, Jan, still no Dominic. You got to work on that, Paula. I got a Paula for that. Okay. So, they like the fall. I'm a spring person, but I can get used to this break from the heat. I do wish we had just one more last little late summer that would come in for us, but I do enjoy that the mosquitoes have been knocked down, which makes me very happy. All right. Kim, it's in the 70s in sunny Minnesota. When it's been in the 70s here this week, it's been bonkers in St. Louis cold. It's cold. I'm using that word, August, cold in St. Louis. All right. So today we're going to be talking about those oops kits that come with your PMQ and how to use them. And we're going to give you the behind the scenes tips and tricks on how to cut your own pieces so they look like the pieces that come off our die cutters. This is going to be fun. If you're doing a Mystery 5.0, if you're doing a Tim Holtz, if you're doing a PMQ, we're going to show you how to cut some of those shapes to get them to look like die cutter shapes. So that way you can keep going with these lovely projects. All right, we're going to start as we always do with questions that have been submitted by you guys. You're going to go to cottoncuts.com/live to submit a question for the show. It can be, you guys, literally anything. We will take any question. I will answer whatever is on your mind, whatever your burning questions are. And so our questions today, Nicole is saying it's hot in Houston, which is why you had to get up early and mow. I love and appreciate that. All right. Good morning. Good morning. I love all these folks checking in from all over. It's fantastic. Okay. Our first question comes to us from Margaret in Portland, Oregon. Thank you so much for your question, Margaret. She writes, I've been quilting for about 3 years now, and I feel like I'm ready to tackle more complex projects. Kudos to that. But I am worried about choosing fabrics that will work well together. Do you have any tips for building confidence in fabric selection, especially when working with prints and solids together? Okay, this is a great question, I think, to ask you guys as well. What do you guys like to do when you're coming up with putting together coordinating prints? Because I feel like we've all been in that beginner phase where we go into a quilt shop and there's a pattern and all the fabrics are sitting right there. And you can make the quilt that's in the pattern. Or you see the quilt hanging on the wall and you buy all the fabrics for the quilt hanging on the wall. And you can make that quilt because you can see it. All the fabrics are paired for you. With the Puzzle Mystery Quilt, all those fabrics are put together for you. With the Mystery 5.0, all those fabrics are put together for you. But once we get past that, once we get into the I want to see a pattern and in my brain convert it into other fabrics and colors, it becomes challenging and it becomes hard. And it's something that even experienced quilters can go along and they'll find a pattern and they'll pick out their fabrics. And then before you know it, they have that yellow in there that they didn't really love, or they've got that pink that didn't really work, right? There's always those fabrics that you wish you could go back and make them slightly differently. And so there's some ways to kind of get to that first bite of the elephant, right? To get past that, I see it in a shop, it's coordinated for me and I want to do my own thing. And so the first suggestion is really to kind of start with a fabric that you love, right? So it's easy to find joy in fabrics if you love them. So if you've got that one fabric and you have a pattern for it, start with that fabric and then pick coordinates out of that fabric. And I know that manufacturers like to make this easy for us and have a collection and say, this Tula Pink is a Tula Pink. And as long as you get the Tula Pink fabrics, it's all going to be the same pink. You can do that. You can also branch out and do solids from other manufacturers. You can bring in other things. I also do think that, we have this challenge here in the shop with some folks that it doesn't have to be matchy, that it can be something that as long as it blends, so it can be in the same color fabric, in the same color selection and still work together. I'm seeing a suggestion on Instagram that says, I look at the selvage colors to help with coordinating fabric shades. That is another fantastic idea. These manufacturers are printing so much information in the selvage, and sometimes they'll give you the little dots of the RGB colors they used, and you can use that to pick coordinating fabrics. You can use that to pick coordinating solids as well. That is a fantastic suggestion. You can also play with scale, right? And so here's my fabric, here's my coordinates that I want to come with it, or here's my fabric, and here's things in the same color family, but have a larger scale or a smaller scale, right? And I feel like that is a skill that needs to be practiced and developed, is how to mix and match different scale with your fabrics. Every month when we're shopping for Modern Maker fabrics, my team knows we pick a big focal print. We get this like a big print that has a lot of visual interest and a lot of colors. Then we pick a medium scale print, and then we pick a small scale print. And we do this because your eyes need places to rest in a quilt. And so many times people will be like, I love this print, and I love this print, and I love this print, and I love this print. But they don't give your eyes anything to rest on. And sometimes it can look like it's on some measure of psychedelic drugs, because you've got lots of prints competing with each other. But make sure that you give your eyes something to rest on. It can be a small portion of your quilt. It can be the background of your quilt. But your eyes need that measure of rest to help define some of the shapes that are going into the quilts. Nicole's saying she starts with one fabric that she loves, and then finds a pattern that will emphasize that fabric and other fabrics that will also enhance that feature fabric. Rarely does she start with a pattern. I think that's also fantastic. It's do you either find a pattern that you love, or do you find a fabric that you love? And I think in both cases, I think those are both fantastic catalysts of inspiration for the path that comes before you. Now, I think something else that we're able to do more now in the digital world we live in is coming up with digital swatch books. And so that fabric you love, I guarantee you can find that fabric, that digital image online, unless of course it's really old, guys, unless you're going way back to like, pre-2000s with a fabric. Most of those digital swatches are online. And what you can do is you can take that swatch and you can get other swatches from fabrics you're finding online. It is not 100% accurate. I'm not going to sit here and be like, this is awesome. Get all those images that coordinate, because sometimes digital images are different. Sometimes your screen monitor is different. But it is also another way to put together a set of coordinating fabrics. It's actually what we do at Cotton Cuts. When I pick colorways for Puzzle Mystery Quilt, when I'm picking colorways for the Mystery 5.0, it's all digital images for us. We're not going to go out and buy a whole bunch of yardage of fabric and put it together and then, oh, that fabric doesn't work, and take it out and bring it in. We start with the digital fabric. Then once we bring it in, we're able to fine tune it as it arrives. But digital swatches and creating an inspiration board. You can also actually go get physical swatches too. Now, quilt shop stores don't sell swatches. This is more of an upholstery thing. But if you have a little bit in your stash, cut a little bit off, create almost, stick them to a piece of board and see how that board looks and how it plays to you. These are all baby steps and things to try. You might try the swatch board and realize, hey, this isn't for me. That is fine. That is fantastic. You've tried it. You have a tool in your tool belt, but it may not be your preferred tool, but maybe a project 5 years down the road, you're like, hey, that's a fantastic idea. I should use that. One of the things that I learned was the black and white photo. This is the technique we're using in Mystery 5.0. I learned that a long time ago. And I bring it up every now and then because it helps me with saturation and with hue, and making sure that when I take that black and white photo, not every fabric shows out dark and not every fabric shows out light, because then there's no contrast and it's going to completely wash out in the final design, which might be what I'm going for. But if I am not, I'd rather know that at a photo place than actual stitched in together face. Catherine's saying that this is what she loves about Cotton Cuts boxes. And she now has enough now that she can curate her groups of fabrics for her next quilt. I like that. Funny though, they tend to be the same designer in the end. Yes, I think, I think sometimes we overeducate ourselves, and we tend to think if I sew with Kaffe, I can only have Kaffe in my quilt. But I love mixing designers, just taking it and looking at the fabric for the color and the beauty that it is, versus this is an Allison Glass fabric. It has to go with Allison Glass. This is Bonnie and Camille. It has to go with Bonnie and Camille. I like the bringing it together. And I love in our classic boxes, it brings me great joy when I can send a reproduction print next to a Tula Pink print, and you don't know unless you look at the card that it's an 1880s reproduction print, and it looks really good with that Tula Pink that's very, very modern. So all that is fun stuff. Sometimes it just helps to break your box, and sometimes to forget some of the things that you've learned about the fabrics that you're using. All right. Such a great conversation, Margaret. Thanks so much for the question. I appreciate that. I know many people are in that advanced beginner phase and asking themselves the same thing. So well done. All right, our next question comes to us from David in Tucson, Arizona. I was just talking about Tucson. I've spent a lot of time in Phoenix, but yes. Yes, we have male. Oh, yes. Sorry. Yes. So we do have male quilters that do so with us. I love our male quilters. Obviously, Dominic is one of my favorite male quilters as well. I'm working on a quilt for my grandson's bedroom, and I want it to be durable enough for everyday use. What are some techniques I can use during the quilting process to make sure this quilt will hold up lots of washing and a very active 8-year-old? All right. This is one I can help with, but I would also love to hear ideas from you guys as well. I've made many quilts for my children. They're on their beds. They get washed a lot. I think 8 years old is an interesting age because you're past that point of newborn, infant, toddler, where they're spitting up and there's a lot of bodily fluids on there and you're washing that quilt every day. But 8-year-old, and especially boys, I mean, they're at the point of almost stinking. Like I walked in my laundry room this morning and almost died because it's soccer season in our house. Ugh. So 8-year-old boys, they're pretty rough with their quilts, right? And so I think it's one of those things when you're looking at the actual quilting and you're past the point of piecing and you've picked a pattern that you love and you've got all your seam allowances in the right place. It really comes down to making sure you have a durable batting in there. And so some of the cotton poly blends usually work well. 80-20 is a recommended one for that has a high amount of washes. It depends on where he is too, right? You don't want to increase sweating in an 8-year-old boy. Speaking from firsthand experience, not super great. So you want to make sure it's something that's breathable for wherever he is. And when you're looking at quilts that might be more functional over, visual, higher amounts of quilting actually help. They do add weight to the quilts. And I know 8-year-old boys, I've seen a lot of weighted blankets, but when you actually add that much thread and you put a lot of quilting into it, you're adding weight to it and by nature making it a weighted blanket that could be comforting and soothing for young children. And so it actually makes it stronger to actually over quilt it. I would love to hear what you guys think. So if you're putting function into the finishing of your quilt, what are some things that you do differently for a product that might have a high amount of washing or a quilt that is meant to grow with a child? Now, I mean, we're not talking about pattern design here. I think, David, it's one of those, I want to make sure that we're, pattern design for an 8-year-old is different because they're growing fast and all those good things. But when it comes to the quilting, it really comes down to making sure it's as durable as possible. I don't want to get necessarily into cotton thread versus poly thread. That's a completely different discussion. But, when it comes to high amount of washing, you want to make sure that you're using compatible materials as well. So what do you guys think? I'm sure many of you have made quilts out there for a very active 8-year-old. What are things that you put into your finishing for considerations for constructions? All right. Thanks, Margaret. Thanks, David, for those questions. I love it. Keep them coming. cottoncuts.com/live. We'll talk about next week's show, but definitely bookmark that page because it's going to come back. All right. So what's going on in the shop? Again, another bonkers crazy week here in the shop. We have been doing a ton of fantastic projects. So we had our blowout sale last week. And so this is the first time we partnered with Fab Shop Pop. They're a fantastic organization. They're great. They're awesome. And we did a blowout sale. You guys, I am blown away by your support. It kept us super busy. Savannah still has just a couple orders back there, but it is awesome. We are also preparing for our next retreat. It is upon us, folks. We are going, Cotton Cuts is going to Sonoma next week. We leave on Tuesday. We come back on Sunday. We have about 22-ish folks that are joining us in Sonoma for this incredible retreat. This is our signature light retreat. And so a signature light retreat is an in-person puzzle mystery quilt experience. You also get to sew the day before, you get to sew the day after. So it's a mix of a retreat with a unique puzzle mystery quilt experience. This one is very wine vineyard themed in its retreat. Everyone gets their own puzzle mystery quilt that they get to sew along with us. Plus it's held in Sonoma and it's a beautiful time of the year in Sonoma. It is going to be fun. Our team shipped all of the materials up their freight. So we have it on good authority. They are on time. How many staff goes? So for Sonoma, it is just going to be Jason and I going to Sonoma. No Dominic. Unfortunately, he has school and a soccer game and a volleyball game and all the things that my very active 13-year-old has at this time of year. And so next week, we are going to have another live show from Sonoma. And so what we want to do is we want it to be another Ask Me Anything anything type of show. So you're going to go to cottoncuts.com/live. And this is going to be an Ask Me Anything. I will be on set from Sonoma. It's going to be 7:30 in the morning. We can see the sun come up together in Sonoma. But this is hey, if you've got any of those burning questions, like, hey, how do you guys pick the fabrics for fill in the blank? How did you get into this business? What does your daily schedule look like? Anything that you guys want to know. How did I teach my children how to sew? Anything that you guys want to know. This is an Ask Me Anything, no holds barred. Whatever burning question you might have in the back of your head, feel free to ask it. We'll also take questions live during the show, but this is a fantastic way for you guys to get just unfiltered access to me. And, what was my background? Where did I go to school? Anything that you guys might have. Where's Cotton Cuts going to be in 5 years? All those questions can be on the table. So definitely go to the website, ask those questions as well. All right. And lastly, so we have our retreat location set for next year. And so we are going to be taking Cotton Cuts to Denver in March and to Savannah in May. And so Denver is going to be a full signature retreat. So we are bringing in a celebrity guest instructor. We are in the final stages of negotiating what that's going to look like. And I am inspired, you guys. This is someone that if you spent literally 30 seconds in any quilting group on Facebook in the past year, you've seen this person's work. If you've spent time on Instagram, you've seen this person's work. This is going to be a phenomenal instructor. I am so happy we are like this close, and I'm probably jinxing it, to getting it to the finish line and being able to announce it, but that's coming soon. And then Savannah is going to be a signature light. So we are definitely going to be taking the team to Savannah for an in-person Puzzle Mystery Quilt experience. We will have costumes and excitement and giveaway and fun, and it is going to be awesome. And we cannot wait to go visit both of those cities in early 2026. Those registrations are going to be open really soon. Like I said, we have to finalize a few things with instructors. We have to take a look at some of the hotels. We've been getting final bids and we've made our selections. So we're putting it all together. Sign-ups for those are going to open up very, very, very soon. All right. Clue 2 for Under the Sea ships tomorrow. It is on track. It is on time. Clue 2 is coming. If you still have not signed up yet, I hope everyone has. Or perhaps there's a colorway that you've seen that you might not have signed up for. Those signups are closing in a month. That'll be it. Once that is done, that goes into the vault. It goes away. It's in the Disney vault. You cannot get to it anymore. There will be no signups after it is September 26th. Now, if you are signing up what we will call late, so let's say you signed up this week or you signed up last week or you're going to sign up next week. So our team gets you back on track with everybody else. So this is one of those things that if you sign up now, you're not going to be continually a month behind everyone else. We charge you to get you on track with everybody. We'll ship your Clue 1 and 2. I guarantee if you signed up in the past week or two, you might get Clue 2 before Clue 1. It's coming. It's the sequence of events and how things move. If you sign up next week, you are going to get your Clue 1 and 2 together. We try to keep everyone on this journey at the same time so that way nobody's experience is ruined. We will get you all caught up. So everyone, just be patient, especially if you signed up last week or into next week. It is all coming, I promise. And if you have any questions at any time, Carrie is awesome. She's sitting over here today. She will help you. Just send an email to help@cottoncuts.com and she will get you sorted. All right. And we talked last week. So flyaway, we're cutting 8, 9, 10 and extra borders. So flyaway is completely, we're wrapping that up here so we can get that off the shelf. Get ready for our next puzzle mystery quilt. Get ready for our next mystery 5.0. It is bonkers. But Paula wanted me to make sure that everyone wrote on their calendars the reveal for flyaway. Sorry, they're showing, Robin just walked in. And so they're showing Robin's finished Mystery 5.0, and it is taking every fiber of my being not to look over at this finished quilt, guys. So it is restraint in me to not look over at this quilt right now. Wait, oh, she's saying, wait. So she's going to fold it back up. I think they're going to fold it back up and show you guys what the Mystery 5.0, the back of Robin's quilt looks like. Oh, you want me to? Okay. So these are 4 of the 5. Mine isn't in this stack because I still need to sew a border on it. But here's the reveal. All right. Fantastic. That was it. That is all you guys get to see of Mystery 5.0 until next week. Okay. All right. New activity for Under the Sea starting with Clue 2. Jana has a question about that. Okay. So fantastic. So let me finish Mystery 5.0 and I'll come back to the new design derby. Okay, so for Mystery 5.0, that reveals next week. This was like, it just started, it's gonna end. So next week on Wednesday, we'll be dropping a video. It's not gonna be live, you guys. I'm gonna be in Sonoma, sorry about that. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna show you all 5 colorways that have been sewn by folks on my team. We're gonna show you what the finished design is, and it's gonna be awesome and fun. And then we'll have in the Facebook group only. That's where the Mystery 5.0 Facebook group only is where that reveal video is going to be. It won't be shareable. We want to make sure that you're in that group. You get to see the reveal and you get to see the finished design. We will also have a social sew along. So we're going to have one this Saturday for Clue 4, which we just announced yesterday. And then we're going to have a Saturday social next week where we're going to get together and see everyone's finished designs. And you guys, this one, because of the choose your own nature of it, because there's 2 different layouts, because you've had design changes on lights and darks and which dark you're pairing with contrast, because of all those designs, everyone's quilt is going to be different. This is going to be like a fingerprint, right? Your quilt is your fingerprint. It is going to be different than everyone else's. Even mine, I followed Rose's recommendations up until the end, and I was like, I want to kind of move some things around, and I did. And so this is going to be fun to see all the ways in which people have interpreted this design differently and come up with beautiful, fantastic quilts. And if you can believe it, starting next week, we're going to start talking about our next Mystery 5.0 design, Island Hopping. That is coming. It is going to be awesome. All right, so I'm going to go back to Jana's question. Jana asked about our new flat Nancy challenge-ish experience for Clue 2. So for those of you that are participating in Under the Sea, we're starting with Clue 2 through to the end. Each month, we're going to be doing a design. Is it design derby or drawing derby? Design derby. Design derby is what we're calling it. We like our alliteration at Cotton Cut. C, C, D, D. It is our derby. And so what we're going to do is we're going to give you a prompt. We're going to give you a series of questions, a series of line items, and it's going to be draw this, draw this, draw this, draw this in the space, and then you're going to tell us what you drew. And depending on how you interpret the instructions, you might get a different design than what was intended. You'll go to the website, you're going to upload that picture of what you drew, and you're going to be entered to win prizes. We're going to give away 2 $25 gift cards each month. If you do it every month through to the end, you can be entered to win a free PMQ for next time. And so this is meant to be super fun. I can tell you, if you guys are watching now, I might as well just tell you what the first one is. So Derby 1 is a house. So when you get it and you see it, I'll give you an example. It's draw a square, put a triangle on top of the square, put a rectangle vertically in the lower right-hand side, put another horizontal in the square. So in that case, you're drawing a house. But when we tested it here in the shop, we got a lot of different interpretations of that, which is just all part of the fun and the hilarity and how we read and interpret these types of instructions. Ellen, they are based in AI, but they've had human interaction, and so it'll be fun and entertaining. Now, they are not the same AI that is generating the quilt patterns from the instructions that Dominic is working on. It is very different than that. Okay. Holy cow. Down so many rabbit holes. All right. So I think I've covered everything on the what's going on in the shop. You guys, there's so much. They are cutting and chipping and moving things through. And we've got Tim Holtz in purple coming, which was just cut off the bolt yesterday, so it can ship in time next week. They are moving and grooving. All right, so let's talk about our main topic today. And so let's talk about the Puzzle Mystery Quilt Oops Kits. And so we had an ambassador for Cotton Cut saying that she's worked with a lot of mystery quilts and she's never had an oops kit before. And it was kind of a surprise for her. And so I wanted to talk about the oops kits, why we do it, how you can use them, what you're going to make with them, and then what you can do when you're done with them. So a lot of quilt shops will offer an oops kit, an oopsie kit. And so these are meant in case you make an accidental mistake in the sewing process. So think about a traditional quilt kit. It's got a quarter yard, a half yard, a yard of this, and you make a mistake and you're short and you need just a little bit more to finish your project. You can get an oopsie kit. For us, you can get an oops kit in case you're stitching along in your puzzle mystery quilt and your seam ripper decides to get a mind of its own and it punctures or cuts your fabric, or perhaps you've sewn a couple pieces together and they're stretched out and you can't get them to go back together again, or you've simply misplaced the parts. I've had parts jump off my ironing board before. This is real, it happens, but you want to keep sewing. Now, in all of those scenarios, you could definitely send us a note and we'll replace these parts. This is what we do every day, right? I would rather send you a triangle or two in the mail and get you going and back to sewing and finish the quilts than not have a finished project. That is a disaster situation. So you're definitely more than welcome to go to cottoncuts.com/PMQ-support, and we will send you the parts and pieces. That is easily done. But if you're one of those people that you only have one window of time to sew and then life takes over and you can't sew past that time, the Oops Kit is a perfect way to keep you sewing again right from the table, right? So you don't even have to get up. You've got the parts ready. And so we build our Oops Kits to be a fat eighth of all of the main prints in your quilt design. So it's going to be fabrics A through F. There are 6 of them in every PMQ. I'm going to lie and say that we did one PMQ with 8. That was a disaster. So there are 6 prints in every PMQ design, except for the one we're going to forget that had 8. And so a fat eighth is this guy here. And so I'm going to show you. It's a pretty healthy piece of fabric, right? However, I'm going to channel my inner Dominic, and we've done many shows where we've talked about standardization in the quilting world. And one of the biggest woes in the quilting world is that there is no standardization for what defines a fat eighth. A fat eighth can be literally anything that the quilt shop decides, and they get to determine how it's cut. It's not a fat quarter, which is a half a yard and then you cut off the fold. It is a half a yard, you cut off the fold, and then you can cut that piece either way you want. Now, a fat eighth will have the same surface area. It is just going to be cut at perhaps a different angle. And so we actually cut ours. So it would be a half yard. So this is 18 inches this way. The fold would be here, and then we also cut it in half the same way as the fold. You might find a fat eighth that's the other way. That is completely up to the shop. And it's important that when you're buying or looking at fat eighths, you always consider that it might be a little different, and reading the labels will help. All right. So whenever we're cutting our PMQs, we're always using our die cutters to do it. And so when you receive the parts for your quilt, they're going to have the little dog ears clipped off here. I've got some parts and pieces here. Paula did a great job stocking moose samples this morning. So, you know, we always cut off those dog ears. So when you sew it together, you don't have extra bulk. You don't have extra weight in your quilt design. And so we do that. The die cutters do that automatically. We're not manually doing that. When we die cut it, it's all coming off the die cutter as you're receiving it. And so when you're replacing parts and pieces, it's important to replicate that process as close as you possibly can, because you don't want that one odd triangle in your quilt that might stretch, do weird things because it was cut slightly differently than the die cutter does it. And I mean, if that matters to you, right? You might be just we're flying by the seat of our pants, and as long as I've got a fabric in there and it looks great, we keep going. That is great. You do you. If there is something that, you know, you're concerned about mixing a quarter square cut with a half square cut, then make sure that you're kind of following these instructions as best as you can to mimic what we do on the die cutters. Now, I know when Dominic was here, we talked about warp and weft, and we talked about how there's some fabric dimensions and, you know, the lengthwise versus grain wise. And so everything that we cut on our die cutter, we line the cut up with the grain on the fabric. And so fabric is woven. I'm going to do my universal fabric is woven hand signal. I don't know why I do it that way. It feels silly, but okay. So this is fabric is woven. And so what you want to do is make sure that you line up your cuts as closely as possible with the vertical or horizontal weave of the fabric. That's going to minimize fraying and it's going to minimize stretching. And so you want to make sure that you're cutting all of your cuts as closely as possible with the grain of the fabric. Now, you know, make sure you don't get any puckers or anything like that. Now, when we're talking about the puzzle mystery quilts, we have some basic categories of shapes. So first off, we have our squares, right? So these are the basic square shapes. When we cut anything for a puzzle mystery quilt, for Tim Holtz, for Mystery 5.0, they're usually going to be a 2-inch grid or a 3-inch grid. Now, these pieces, when you receive them, are cut 2.5 and 3.5 because we want to accommodate for seam allowances. But most of the things that Cotton Cuts does is on a 2-inch grid or a 3-inch grid. And so squares are super, super, super basic in order to be able to get out of your pieces. We also have rectangles, right? So I'm going to talk about how to get some precision cuts on these in a minute, but I want to give you guys kind of an overview of the classifications of different types of shapes. So we have rectangles, obviously. I feel like we've all took geometry, but for some of us, it might have been many years ago. So, you know, rectangles are uneven on both sides. Every square is a rectangle. Not every rectangle is a square, all of that fun stuff. Then we also have triangles. And so triangles are where things get a little wonky because Cotton Cuts mixes half square triangles with quarter square triangles. We've talked about the difference between those and how to cut them and the bias edges on previous shows. But I want to show you guys here in a second how to get the triangles to look like the Cotton Cuts triangles as closely as possible when you're cutting them. You can tell the difference between a half square triangle and a quarter square triangle. I'm going to show you guys this, and this is going to be one that you're going to, if you're a longtime detective, you might not even know this. So here's a clue. This is Under the Sea. Sorry, I wanted to make sure I wasn't showing you guys anything ahead of time. And so here we always have a layout of the parts and pieces. And so you can see we have a whole bunch of squares. If it is oriented like this, if it is a triangle that is 90 degrees like this is a half square triangle. And so this is a square that has been cut on the diagonal to make a half square triangle. This little guy right here, if it's oriented this way, that's a quarter square triangle. And so that's how you know the difference between this being a quarter square and these guys being a half square, is how we put them in the instructions. So when you're looking to replace the parts and you want to make sure you're cutting them to be like all of their friends and the rest of the quilt, you want to make sure that you're looking, these are half square triangles and these are quarter square triangles. That has been that way since the very first mystery, since the beginning of time. But you can tell if it's a half square or quarter square depending on what side face that triangle is sitting on. All right. The other pieces that we use at Cotton Cuts are border strips. Now, you're not going to be able to get your border strips out of your Oops kits because we cut all of our border strips to be full length of fabric. So very seldom will you get a product from Cotton Cuts where you have to piece the borders together because we cut them with the fabric. We cut them with the selvage, running selvage. And so that way there's less stretch, there's less warping, there's less deformation. But when you're looking to replicate border strips, say perhaps you want to change out the fabric, we cut them, and it's inefficient for a home quilter with one project. It's efficient for us where we're cutting for thousands of people, but we cut them full length of fabric to make sure that you guys get as consistent of a border cut as possible. All right. Let's see here. So when you are cutting, I'm putting this because we had a conversation in the shop earlier this week about uncomfortable cutting fabrics and shapes, especially when you're trying to match them with die cut. So I want to make sure everyone has a solid foundation of tools and preparedness before you start cutting these fabrics. All right. So the first, make sure that your blade is sharp, right? And so I know that we as quilters, we want to use it until it's dead. We want it until it's, you know, it's that found on the road dead. We want to use it until it's completely done. But the minute that you change out that blade, you are changing your life. And I know that we all have this feeling. We want to use it until we can't use it anymore, but it needs to be as sharp as possible because you're actually damaging your fabric. I know you're getting an inconsistent cut and you want to do it, you want to keep going, but changing out that blade is actually going to help improve the quality of your cutting. And dull blades actually lead to a lot of injuries. I've seen anyone who's been on Facebook, people cut themselves all the time. Dull blade is usually not a great thing to be done with that. Also, clear quilting rulers. And so I have a small one and a big one. Oops, I'm hearing. How do you, Paul is saying, okay, I'm going to ask you guys. So how do you know when you need to change your blade? I can give you some hints and tricks and like, for me, I know I need to change my blade if I make a clear, consistent cut and it skips over any of the fabric, right? If there's anything that's not cut, then I know that I probably need to take a look at my blade. Either that or I'm cutting in the same part of my cutting mat and I need to move it a little bit. But I'd be interested to know, you guys, how do you know it's time? When do you make the decision to change out your rotary blade? You need a quilting ruler. And so clear rulers are your friends here. Opaque rulers are really, really hard to use when you're trying to get some of these 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch dimensions. And then make sure that you're cutting matte. Yeah, Janice says for her, it leaves a thread or two uncut. Same. right? If I'm cutting once and it's not cutting consistently, I know it is time to put it away. Does it go dull quickly? All right, I'm going to ask you guys. I think it depends. So I am an engineer, guys, and I am a statistician. And so I'm going to answer with it depends on if your blade goes dull quickly. So I would say if you keep your blade consistently covered when you're not using it, if you keep it out of direct sunlight and humidity, if you don't drop it, which happens, guys. Like I've dropped blades before. If you drop it, it's going to dull faster. If you cut paper with it, just like your paper scissors and your fabric scissors, you should have a paper rotary cutter or a fabric rotary cutter. Now, nobody is going to tell you, nobody's going to get mad at you if you cut paper with your rotary cutter, but all of those things can increase the dull. It's a metal, guys, so it's going to wear over time. It's no different than, struts on a bridge. If it's exposed to environmental conditions, it'll wear faster. There are things that you can do, like consistently keeping it covered, making sure it's not on the edge and gets knocked off the table, and making sure that you don't cut your ruler. It happens a lot, right? Some of us will get so excited and we accidentally end up like cutting out the corner of the ruler. As I was looking at this guy this morning, it's got a couple chips where it's accidentally been cut out of the corner here in the shop. That happens. That's going to dull your blade faster. All right. Now your cutting mat should be in good and clean condition. There's little nicks and cuts. We have a lot of employees here in the shop, and we have employees that like to, when they're cutting, I think like they're trying to kill the fabric, and they like to cut really, really hard and use a lot of muscles. I think that's an indicator that A, you're overpressing, and B, that the blade might be dull, is if you've got to put a lot of muscle into it. But what happens with that is it actually, if you cut in the same place, it's going to wear through your cutting mat. And we've had it actually cut through the mat and cut the table. So there's a table here in the shop that has a couple good gouges in it where it's been pressed down too hard. And so I would say, Ann Upchurch is asking, when do you know to change your mat? And I feel like if you're finding that there's too many grooves and cuts in it in a given location and you can't adjust, I know so many of us want to start at that 0. We want to start on that 0 line and we want to make the same measurement every time. If you're comfortable, start at the 1 and then just add your dimensions there. Start at the 2. And mats stretch over time. And so not only do they wear over time, but they also stretch. And so that's why if you're measuring any fine dimensions, you should not be using your cutting mat for that. You should be using your rulers. These rulers are not going to stretch over time. They're not going to bend. They're not going to warp. Your cutting mat will. And so if you want to get precise dimensions, always use the dimensions on your ruler. It's really the cutting surface, Anne. Oh my gosh, there's like people crawling on the ground over here. We are crazy today. Let's see here. Yeah, Savannah says she changes her blade anytime it skips or if she accidentally nicks her ruler. Cutting flannel seems to really dull my rotary blade quickly. I think that's another element too, is if you're using a lot of different substrates, like cutting vinyl, right? That's going to be hard to use if you're using the rotary cutter. It's going to use your blade, as opposed to if you're cutting silk, right? That's going to cut easier. All right. And then with your oops kits, right? So we package them super cutely like this for your oops kits. When they come to you, you're going to want to press all these guys before you start cutting. It's going to be a quick press, not a heavy press, but you want to just get them flat. And so that's what I did this morning before we started this. So I want to show you how to start cutting these shapes, right? So you've got your fat eighth here. And one of the first things I think about when I'm cutting the fat eighth for a PMQ replacement part is how do I efficiently cut the fabric to get the shape that I want? I use every last scrap. I maximize every surface area. And if I need a part at clue 1, I want to make sure I don't make a cut now that won't let me make a cut at clue 7. I want to make sure that I leave as many options open as possible. And so say, for example, I want to be able to cut, we're going to start with our squares, right? So say I want to be able to cut my square. I have a choice. So this is going to be a 2.5-inch square. And I want to be able to get it out of this fabric. So I can either cut 2.5 inches the short way on the fat eighth, or I can cut a 2.5-inch strip the long way on the fat eighth. Now, what you do is completely your own personal choice. I can tell you for me personally, I'm going to take that 2.5 inches off the top end of this fabric. So that way I still have a healthy amount here, and I'm not committing future shapes to being this long distance. So when you're cutting that first strip, when you're cutting that first dimension, think about what is most efficient for you in order to retain as much of the other fabric as possible. And so I know some folks are so used to, hey, I'm going to take my selvage and I'm going to fold it in half towards the fold and I'm going to cut my width of fabric strips. And that works. In this scenario, just take that pause. And where do I want my first 2.5-inch strip to cut? Do I want it to go the short distance or the long distance? And of course, if you're cutting like 6 or 8 parts or pieces, it doesn't matter. If you're cutting 1 or 2, it might be worth just taking that pause and determining which direction you want to cut first. And so when you cut it, this was a question we had in the shop this week, is how do I know what 2.5 inches is on my ruler? Where did my ruler go? How do I know what 2.5 inches is on my ruler? There's a lot of lines on here. It's super confusing. Let me see here. I think this might work. There's a lot of lines on there. It can be kind of confusing. How do I know which dimension is which? How do I know how to get my 3.5 inches? And so what you want to do, the easiest is to get the ruler that's the width you need. So I keep 3.5. In the shop, we have a 4, we have a 4.5, we have a 6.5. We have some common width strips here because it's really easy to use the acrylic, right? That's a fixed width. That's very, very easy to go. Now, say, for example, you need something that's not a fixed width of your ruler. The best way, one of the keynotes to this is to make sure that the line that you're trying to cut is on top of your fabric. Right? So say, for example, I want to cut this at this line. You want to make sure that that print line is on top of your fabric, not to the side of your fabric. And so I'm going to hold that up so you guys can kind of see it. You want to make sure that the printed line that gets the dimension you want is on top of your fabric, not to the side of your fabric. And so that is one of those things. It is, let's see here. I don't use a lot of fat 8s. Yeah, Quilt and Cartel. Yes, it's like a light bulb. The fat 8s, you can actually get a ton of stuff out of. The surface area is actually quite generous. So you want to make sure that, say, if I want to cut on this vertical line here, that line is on top of my fabric, not off to the side. And again, we're splitting small hairs here, right, guys? Like that's a tiny amount, but depending on your experience level and your ability to accommodate some of that variation to your seam allowance, it might be important. And if you're sewing a quilt with a lot of small parts and pieces, like the Mystery 5.0 was, that little line can actually mean a lot when you're putting 100 pieces wide. So just think about how important it is to the final design that it is that accurate. All right. So that's the squares. Squares and strips are super easy, right? It's using your ruler, making sure you're using your ruler and not your cutting mat to get those dimensions, and making sure that you're cutting them with the grain. Sometimes we like to increase the degree of difficulty for both us and for you, and we'll pick a print that has directionality to it. We'll pick a flannel, or we'll pick something that has some vertical or a horizontal feature to it, in which case you will have to make a decision if it's more important for you to cut with the grain or if it's more important for you to cut with the design. And so I am saying that because those are sometimes not the same decision. Sometimes manufacturers print a directional fabric and it's going against or slightly off the grain of the fabric. And so you will have to make a decision. Do you want your fabric to be with the grain to where it doesn't stretch, to where it doesn't warp, to where it minimizes the fraying? Or do you want the design in your piece to be vertical or horizontal? And so those are just some considerations when you're cutting those. We make those decisions all the time. And when we make them here, our default is to cut with the grain because we want it to be consistent. We want it to be universal around everyone's parts and pieces. And we want everyone to be happy with the finished product. Plus, a lot of these directionalities are so small, you won't necessarily see them in the finished design. For us internally, we choose to make them with the grain versus the design always. And it's consistent that way, and it's less subjective. Now, when it comes to cutting your triangles. And so in our triangles, right, we have, you guys, these are shapes that you guys know and love. These are half square triangles is what I'm going to show you first. And so for these guys, they have the little dog ears clipped off, and they have a nice 90-degree triangle here with the dog ears clipped off on both sides. That's a half square triangle for us. And so you can very, very easily cut a square that's, in that case, 3 7/8 inch square, cut it across the diagonal and use it. You'll still have your dog ears, which is absolutely fine. And in a quick pinch, if you want to keep sewing, you cut that square 3 7/8, cut it on the diagonal, and in the quilt it goes. Now, I'm going to show you guys how we shortcut it to actually get those dog ears on it here in the shop. If we, for example, have to manually cut something really bad has happened if we have to do this, but we know how to do this. And so I'm going to show you on this 2.5-inch square. Now, in order to get this to look like the half square triangle that we use for Mystery 5.0. So a lot of you that have done Mystery 5.0 that did Floral States of America, doing the Tim Holtz, the 2 7/8 half square triangle is something we use a lot of. And so you actually start with a 2.5-inch square. So you're going to use a smaller square than you would if you were making it and cutting it on the diagonal. This is 2.5 versus 2 7/8. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this, and we're going to test my live cutting abilities. This is going to be a fun day. And so you actually line up the diagonal on your square with the 1/4-inch seam allowance on your ruler. So most rulers have this. It's a 1/4 inch. On this one, it's a dotted line here. And so what you're going to do is you're going to put the opposite corners of your square a 1/4 inch away from the end. And so for me, I'm going to line that up and I am going to cut it. And if I've practiced this enough, which I think I have, it's actually going to work. And so with that, I have made the 2 7/8 half square triangle with the dog ears that you guys are using for a lot of our programs and a lot of our quilts. Now, we're going to do the same thing with the 3.5-inch square. So if you're missing one of these triangles, right, and you need to cut it, you could very easily get a 3 7/8 half square triangle, go all the way up, all the way down. 3 7/8 half square triangle cut on the diagonal is going to get you what you need. However, you can take a 3.5-inch square, which is a very easy square to cut, 3.5 inches versus finding the 7/8 and counting the 7 ticks out of 8, all that stuff. If you want to cut the 3.5-inch square and do the same thing, you're going to line the two opposite points of your square up with your 1/4 inch line on your ruler. See, this one has a nice fancy little dash line. A lot of rulers have that 1/4 inch because it's a super common quilting dimension. You're going to line it up and then you're going to cut on that area and bam. Now I have the 3 7/8 half square triangle. It is exactly like our Scarlet Reef samples here. You can lay it on top of and it is going to be an exact replica of. Right. So, and I'll show you the back too. I'm not just, if this is not this like, voodoo magic type of thing here, it is actually going to be the same exact triangle as you get in your puzzle mystery quilt. Now, I know I'm telling you guys kind of the secret sauce, right? That if you guys wanted to do this, you could do a puzzle mystery quilt. I would not want to do this the 600 times that we have to do a large puzzle mystery quilt. But this is going to get you that replacement shape that is cut on the same grain as our die cut parts and pieces in a very easy, simplified fashion. You could easily do this for 1 part, 2 parts, 4 parts, and it's going to be an exact replica of what we use in the quilt. Now, those giant triangles that we are such a big fan of using, those big triangles that we have, this concept is the same. It is a 6 7/8 half square triangle. So what you're going to do is you're going to cut a 6.5-inch square. You're going to line up your diagonals as well. And through the magic of television and live streaming, I am going to actually do this one correctly with my tiny ruler. And here it is. And so this is that big triangle. So if you're ever short 1 or 2 of them, that's exactly how you can do it. You could definitely do a 6 7/8, cut it on the diagonal, you get 2 parts and pieces. But if you're only short one, you can do it this way and still have plenty of other fabric for other shapes. If you need pairs, definitely do it the other way. But this is how you can get one super easily and super quickly. Now let's talk about those 1/4 square triangles. So a 1/4 square triangle by definition is a square that has been cut through both diagonals on the X. And of course, I'll just do it with this guy here. This is easy enough. So a 1/4 square triangle is cut this way and it is cut this way. It is important to note that for a quarter square triangle, when you cut it that way, you actually have all of these edges are bias edges, which means they are candidates for stretching. They are candidates for moving when you actually stitch these parts together. So when you are recreating this shape and you're trying to cut it out of your oops kit, you want to be mindful that you have created bias edges on these corners. And if you choose to cut it differently, you might be introducing different shape characteristics in your final quilt. Completely up to you. I am an efficient quilter. To me, I'm like, I'm just going to cut it out of a half square triangle and keep going, keep moving. But if that is important to you, the quarter square triangles are always cut on the diagonals of these parts and pieces. And so what I want to show you is an example of this is what the shape looks like. And so it has these dog ears and this one. So this original shape, if we were to draw it up to its hypothetical points, is a quarter square triangle. It is a 7 1/4 quarter square triangle. So to get this shape, you would take a square that is 7 1/4 on each side, and you would cut it on all the diagonals. And you would get parts and pieces that are not like that. Just kidding. That are like this, right? And so here's my quarter square, and I would have 4 of them. Now, if I only need one, this is such a waste of fabric. Like my fabric part of me that is like, oh my gosh, I only need one. And now I got to cut 4. Like it hurts, you guys. And in this scenario, we don't get the dog ears. You can very, very easily lay this guy on top of this guy, and you can manually cut those dog ears off. That is definitely unacceptable. I'm sure you have extra shapes. You can clip those and get the dog ears that the die cutter does. But for me, this is the quote unquote, we'll call it right way to get those bias edges. But it is also a big consumption of fabric because I've got all of these too. And if I only needed one, now I've got a whole bunch of other stuff, right, that you may not possibly need. The hack to that, the shortcut to get to your 7 1/4 is, and if you are a bias edge purist, don't do this. Do it the other way. But if you're I want to get my quilt done this weekend person, what I'm going to encourage you to do is cut a 4 3/4 square. It's a smaller square. It's definitely not what this square is, but it is a smaller square, 4 3/4. And you're going to use the same technique we use for the half square triangles, and you're going to cut it on the diagonal. Now that is going to completely erase everything I said about bias edges. But again, it's minimizing the fabric to get the one triangle you need so you can get back to sewing. And so we're going to do the same thing where we put our 1/4 inch across the diagonal, and I'm going to cut it, and I'm going to show you that it's actually the same shape and dimension as that 7 1/4 quarter square triangle. Exact same thing. And so this works because geometry is awesome. Let's just say geometry is awesome. It is, but like I said, those bias edges are different, but this is going to get you that triangle, and you only have to cut a 4 3/4 square, which is much smaller than that 7 1/4. It's going to use less fabric, and it'll give you the one part you need to get back to sewing, and it'll give it to you quickly and accurately and efficiently, and off you go. And this one also has, the dog ears aren't cut exactly the same way because it is cut a little different, but it is going to give you enough to be dangerous and get back to sewing. All right, I think that is all of the shapes, the hacks, the tips, the tricks that I wanted to give you on that. So that way you can take your oops kit and actually make something that is very similar and akin to the die cut parts so you can get back to sewing. Like I said, if this is too much and you don't want to have to do all this cutting and all this thinking and all this measuring and all this calculating, and you want to sit and sew, I get it. Send us a note. Our team is going to pop parts and pieces in the mail to you. We do this every day. It takes just a few minutes and a stamp, and you guys will be back in sewing as well. If you don't want to have to do all that, that's totally fine. And I completely get it. Now, let's see here. So there's a whole bunch of tips in here about preparation, making sure to use your original pieces as templates so that way they match as well. Cutting one at a time. I think if you're wanting to replicate all these dog ears, putting up a whole stack of 16 parts and pieces and trying to cut them is just a recipe for disaster. We would only use the machine for that. We would never manually rotary cut that. We only rotary cut 2 to 4 layers at a time when we're cutting our strips. But if you want to do this, do definitely 1, 2 pieces at a time. Anything more than that, you run the risk of losing some of the accuracy that we're building into the die cut parts and pieces. Keep your rotary blade sharp. We talked about that. And I think this one is the one tip that I definitely want to spend a moment on. Don't rush. This is not a race. Yes, if you might get behind, you might get ahead, it's totally fine. It is you finishing on your own time and creating a piece of art that you were going to love, rather than hate because you rushed through it and you made a mistake and you forced one part that didn't need to be there. It is not a race. Definitely don't rush and enjoy the process, right? Again, if what I've described to you and you're like on fire and you're like, oh my God, light bulbs are going off. This is great. This is awesome. This is amazing. And it inspires you, then definitely run with that. If all of this it's too much, I don't want to have to deal with that, I don't got time for that, then that's fine. We have a solution for that too. So Jana has a tip here as well. So about having a prepaid kit is that you can borrow a piece from a future clue while you wait for us to send you the part. And so we've definitely used that tip and trick. We used to send prepaid kits only to folks that lived overseas, that lived internationally. And anytime they were missing a part and piece, by the time we would mail it to them, that's a 2-3 week experience. And so what we had them do is we had them steal a part from a future clue. We would tell them this piece is going to be in clue 7, grab it and bring it back. And then by the time they got their part in a piece, they could sew it together at the same time. It is fantastic. That is a fantastic tip, Jana, is that you can steal future pieces to keep sewing today. All right. So this is a question that I have for you guys. So we've talked about what you can do with an oops kit and a fat 8. What have you guys used for your leftover oops kits, right? You might not need them. A best case scenario, you get to the end of the mystery and you still have your oops kit and it's still packaged like this. And you were looking at it and you're like, wow, that is an awesome assortment of fabric. What can I possibly do with this? And so I would love to hear what you guys have done with it, but I have a list of ideas here. So one of the first things you can do, and I know that Ian, off kilter crafter, I've only known him for like 10 years. I'll get this right at one point. Is he actually uses it to put accents in his borders. So if he's got a long strip, he'll break it up and he'll use these methods and he's going to cut triangles and squares and strips and he's going to put them into his borders and he's going to make it pop. You can also, if you're crazy like me and after piecing a front, you want to add some piecing elements to the back. I've been known to take pieces from the front and put them into the back and kind of integrate some pieced backing into it. That is another fantastic idea if you just haven't gotten enough of these fabrics and really want to piece some more, which is somehow how I always am. If you want to make a bed sham or a pillow sham, I know those are things that used to be made a lot in like the 70s and 80s. I don't see them as much anymore, but if you want to make a pillow sham or a bed sham to match the quilt, this is a fantastic use of those parts and pieces. I'm seeing a lot of matching pillows, and I think that's been kind of our default here in the shop is people will take snippets, they'll put it with the oops kit, and all of a sudden they have matching pillows. Let's see. Jana is saying that sometimes that when she has the finished PMQ design, there's some pieces that she wants to fussy cut and actually make more of a center focus. And so she'll use her oops kit to accentuate parts of her PMQ that she wants to add some more visual interest to. Jana, that's a fantastic idea. Accent pillows, toss pillows, table runners. I think I see some people sometimes buy 3, 4, 5, or 6 oops kits. That's fantastic. That is a you do you. If you want to add a lot of pieced elements, that is a fantastic way to go as well. I've also seen some people using them to make quilt labels for the back of the quilt. So we've talked about kind of labeling those quilts. If you want to make something that's bigger and has visual interest and actually brings fabrics from the front onto the back, making a quilt label with your oops kit is another idea. And so I am going to also share that last week we spent a lot of time talking about a scrap system. And so as I look at these parts and pieces, they are just perfect candidates to put into whatever scrap system you want to use. If you want to cut them into squares or strips, by the time you're done, now this oops kit has turned into something functional that can get incorporated with other fabrics from your stash. And whenever you create that project, you'll look back and always have a memory of this puzzle mystery quilt as well. So Terry says she pieces them to make her quilt bigger. That is absolutely fantastic. You can also use them to make binding as well. So if you wanted to have kind of a pieced binding around this quilt, this would be a fantastic use of your oops kit as well. To add an accent to the bed end tables. Yes, they have bag coasters, little projects. These fat 8s are quite versatile. When I hold this up, like this is a relatively large piece of fabric and you're going to get 6 of them with your PMQ. There's a lot that can be done with this with just minimal effort, you guys, a lot of small projects. All right. So make sure that you guys share your tips and tricks. If you've learned something with the triangles, if you've been inspired to try something new, definitely comment on the video and share them, because people are going to watch this later, and it would be nice to hear what you guys have to say as well, not just me babbling on how to make all these fantastic shapes. All right. So, and don't forget, our Cotton Cuts Fabric Facebook group is an incredible resource. If you in 2 weeks are like, hey, what did Kim say? What size did she say to make it? How do I cut it? What is the line on my ruler? Ask all those questions in the group. It is a super supportive community. Everyone wants everyone to get to the same place with the finished quilt. So definitely make sure that you're asking questions of the group. If you're thinking, hey, how can I most efficiently cut this? Should I cut it horizontally or vertically first? Definitely ask the group. There is a fantastic group of people there. All right, so that is everything for our main topic today, which brings me to our giveaway. And so our giveaway this week, we're going to do like we do every week. We're going to give a $25 gift certificate to one lucky person from our shop who answers this question wherever you find this video, YouTube, Instagram, or Facebook. Tell us, this is kind of a funny question. I do enjoy this one. What is your biggest oops moment in quilting, and how did you fix it? So we're going to go back to the start of this conversation. What's your biggest oops moment? What is something that you did incorrectly that you oopsied, and then how did you fix it? Or did you fix it? Did you just leave it? And so maybe you cut the pieces wrong. Maybe you sewed something backwards. We get a lot of folks that take like 2 pieces of fabric thinking it's one and sew it together. And before you know it, you've got 3 pieces stitched together. I wouldn't say that's a biggest oops moment. I would say that's a common oops moment. We have had people report that they were missing parts and pieces only to find that they were actually stuck on their tushy as they were sitting on their chair. That's also a common oops. So find the video and describe to us what's your biggest oops moment and how did you fix it. For me, I've talked about this a lot. It's the quilt that I sewed on all those biased edges that formed the parachute and all the stretching and starch and water that I had to use to be able to get it to go flat, and then spray basting. Lots and lots of spray basting on that one. All right, so fantastic. Thank you guys so much for spending your Thursday morning with us. Hold on, I'm getting yelled at. I'm reading Marlene's comment. Marlene says, if you're gifting your PMQ, you could use it to make a tote to fold it in for giving. Yes, Marlene, that's a great idea. You can make a tote bag. We've also had folks, and I know that that I am going to see Diane next week in Sonoma, but she's a big fan of pillowcases. So you could definitely use these fat 8s to make a pillowcase to put your quilt in, and then that way you have a quilt and a pillow, and you can take it away. I'm going to go throwback. You can also use it to make a quillo, which is the outside piece that your quilt can fold into and becomes a pillow. All of these are fantastic uses for the Oops kids. Let's see here. I'm going to read Savannah saying that her biggest oops was when she made her first quilt, she washed the charm packs because the instructions in the pattern said to wash the fabric. I think we all know. So Savannah, here's the thing, right? So we all know what that looks like because we've all done that or seen that, where you put a charm pack in the washing machine and dryer and what it comes out. So I feel you, Savannah. We've all done there. Let's see here. Cut a piece to the wrong size and pieced it together with the leftovers. It's hidden under the quilting. I love that. Cutting all the pieces wrong, so disappointing, it went in the trash. Catherine, I feel that too. Like I have a project right now that's sitting there it's got some oopses in it, and I don't know if I'll ever get back to it. And yeah, unfortunate. All right. So next week, we're going to be live from Sonoma. Quick reminder, go to cottoncuts.com/live. Any question you guys have, I will happily answer it. And I will be on the vineyards at 7:30. So hopefully no alcohol. There might be. You never know. Right? It's Sonoma and we are retreating. That day, we're also going to be doing the big reveal for that puzzle mystery quilt we're sewing. So maybe we'll be able to share some of the photos with you guys. That is fantastic. All right. That is it for me, gang. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Have a fantastic weekend. We will see you at the Saturday social and next week for the Mystery 5.0 reveal. Thank you so much and have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye now. And cut. Thank you so much for watching our video. We have so much fun making these, and we hope that you were both delighted and inspired by what you just watched. This video was sponsored by Cotton Cuts. Cotton Cuts is your one stop for all the best fabric and thread memberships. Love fabric? We've got you covered. Love thread? We've got you covered. We get that no 2 quilters are cut from the same cloth, which is why our memberships are as unique as you. We also have the largest block of the month in the world. Over 4,000 detectives solve our puzzle mystery quilts every year, and you can join them. Simply go to cottoncuts.com to learn more about all the awesome and fun things that we're doing. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe to make sure you get all of our new fresh content every time it comes out. Thank you so much. Happy sewing enthusiasts, and we will see you soon. Bye now.